Abel had always been the kind of guy who blended into the background. He wasn't the loudest in the lecture hall or the most confident in group discussions. He kept to himself not because he wanted to, but because life had taught him that the less he spoke about his struggles, the better. Unlike his peers who had parents sending them allowances or flashy cars waiting for them after class, Abel had nothing but sheer determination. He was the boy who stayed behind after lectures to use the school library until it closed, not just for studying, but because he had nowhere better to be. His clothes were clean but worn, his shoes slightly scuffed from years of walking long distances to save transportation money. But if there was one thing that brought warmth to his otherwise difficult life, it was Sophia. She was effortlessly beautiful, with a smile that could light up even the dullest of classrooms. Abel had noticed her from the first year, and from that moment, his heart had been a captive of her presence. She was not just pretty, she had a way of making people feel seen. If you were talking to Sophia, she listened with genuine interest, at least when she wasn't in one of her moods. At times, when things didn't go her way, she could be sharp-tongued, dismissive, or even rude. Yet, Abel admired her still. For years he watched her from a distance, stealing glances when she laughed with her friends, memorizing the way she flipped her hair when deep in thought. He dreamed of telling her how he felt, of confessing that she was the one bright spot in his life. But the thought of approaching her always brought back the same cruel reminder. He was broke and couldn't afford to give Sophia the lifestyle she wanted. What did he have to offer someone like Sophia? She came from a comfortable home, with a future filled with possibilities. Abel, on the other hand, barely made it through school, surviving on scholarships and part-time jobs. So he kept his feelings buried. Then graduation came. Caps were thrown, photos were taken, and promises to stay in touch were made. But as the crowd celebrated, Abel stood quietly at the back, watching as Sophia laughed with her friends, already slipping into a life he could never be a part of. And just like that, they went their separate ways. A few years later, the city was everything Abel had imagined: loud, fast, and unforgiving. Unlike the small world of college where he could blend into a routine, here, survival was a daily battle. He arrived with nothing but a worn-out suitcase, a few savings from odd jobs, and an iron will to make something of himself. For weeks, he roamed the streets, knocking on doors, dropping off resumes, waiting for phone calls that never came. The job market was brutal. No one wanted to hire a young man with no connections, no experience, and nothing but hope in his eyes. Just when despair threatened to take hold, he found work as a waiter in a mid-range restaurant. The pay was barely enough to survive, but it was something. At least it kept him going during the evening time after work for the day. He goes into his fashion design operation in his room practicing and perfecting designs. One evening, after a long shift, Abel stopped by a supermarket to pick up some essentials, bread, noodles, and a bottle of water. As he walked through the aisles, his mind heavy with thoughts of how little his life had changed, he turned a corner and froze. There she was, Sophia. She was standing by the fruit section, inspecting a bunch of grapes, her long hair cascading over her shoulder. She looked just as beautiful as he remembered, if not more. For a moment, Abel considered walking away. What would he say? Would she even remember him? But something inside him refused to let this moment slip away. He swallowed his fear, adjusted his posture, and approached her. Sophia? His voice was calm, though his heart pounded violently in his chest. She turned, her brows furrowing for a split second before recognition dawned in her eyes. Abel? She gasped, a smile breaking across her face. Oh my God, it's been years, look at you. They stood there, caught between the past and present, exchanging stories in the middle of a supermarket aisle. Abel, despite his initial hesitation, found himself laughing and talking freely. Before they parted, he gathered the courage to say, Hey, let's take a walk sometime, catch up properly, and also, do you mind if I could have your number? To his surprise, she nodded. I'd like that. And just like that, their paths intertwined once more. For the first year, their relationship was built on laughter, patience, and the belief that things would get better. Despite Abel's struggles, Sophia stood by his side. She admired his resilience, how he worked long shifts at the restaurant, and still found time to sketch his clothing designs, hoping to build his fashion brand one day, and also balancing his relationship life with Sophia and make her happy. Abel tried his best to shield her from his own financial burdens, as he doesn't want to be seen as incapable of taking care of her. But she wasn't blind. She knew how hard things were for him, and Sophia did help him out as much as she could. She saw it in the way he hesitated before ordering food at restaurants, in the way he carefully counted his money before paying bills. But still, he never complained, never asked her for help. At first, she didn't mind. She was happy to be with him. Eventually both of them moved in together. But over time, the cracks began to show. Then, one fateful evening, everything changed. Sophia's old friends, Lily and Precious, had moved to the city, and when they invited her for a small get-together, she was thrilled. It had been years since she'd last seen them. The night started off well, catching up, reminiscing about college, sipping wine. But as the conversation shifted to relationships, things took a sharp turn. "So, Sophia," Lily smirked, swirling her glass, "tell us about your boyfriend. You must be dating someone successful to afford this apartment, right?" Sophia hesitated before answering. "His name is Abel. We went way back in college. Actually, you guys remember him?" "Abel?" Precious frowned. "That quiet guy? Wait, you're still with him?" Sophia forced a smile. "Yeah, I mean, he's trying. He has big dreams, he just needs time." Lily scoffed. "Big dreams? Sophia, please. If a man is still trying after college, he's failing. You're working a real job while he plays around with dreams?" Precious leaned in. "Be honest, babe. Do you really see yourself marrying a broke guy? Will love pay your bills?" Sophia laughed, but their words stuck like thorns in her mind. As the night ended, she walked home with a strange feeling and doubt. For the first time, she questioned if she was making a mistake. With time, something began to change in Sophia. Ever since that night with Lily and Precious, she had become distant, cold. The warmth in her voice when she spoke to Abel had dimmed. She no longer looked at him with admiration, only impatience. At first, Abel thought she was just going through a phase. He ignored the sharp remarks, the way she sighed heavily whenever he talked about his business plans, the way she now expected him to do everything her way. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. One evening, Abel arrived at their apartment with a small gift, a simple but elegant bracelet he had saved up for. He wanted to remind her of their love, to reassure her that one day, things would get better. As he stepped inside, he found Lily and Precious lounging on the couch, sipping wine. Sophia barely acknowledged him. "You're late," she said, scrolling through her phone. Abel smiled gently. "I wanted to surprise you. I got you something." He extended the small box toward her. Sophia took it reluctantly, opening it with an unimpressed expression. "A bracelet? Abel, really?" she scoffed. "How much did this even cost? Your entire paycheck?" Lily and Precious burst into laughter. Abel felt his heart sink. "I just wanted to do something nice for you," he said softly. Sophia rolled her eyes. "You know what would be nice? If you actually started making real money instead of chasing stupid dreams of yours that wouldn't lead you anywhere." Abel stiffened. "Where is this coming from, Sophie? Why are you talking like this?" Lily smirked. "She's just being honest, Abel. Maybe it's time someone told you the truth." The air grew thick with tension. "Get out," Sophia suddenly snapped. Abel blinked. "What?" Sophia stood up. "I'm done, Abel. I've wasted enough time on you. You're a failure, and I refuse to be dragged down with you." Abel felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. "Sophia, please, slap." The sharp sting of her palm against his cheek echoed through the room. "Get out of my house," she spat. Humiliated and broken, Abel turned and walked out into the cold night, his world shattered as he navigated his way through the street at night with his bags. The days after Sophia threw him out were the darkest of Abel's life. He wandered the streets, replaying the humiliation over and over in his mind. Had he really wasted her time? Was he really a failure? The words cut deeper than the slap she had given him. With nowhere to go, he turned to Daniel, his only true friend. Daniel welcomed him without hesitation. "You're not staying on the streets, man. You'll get back on your feet." But Abel felt paralyzed. He spent days in Daniel's apartment, staring at the ceiling, lost in a void of self-doubt. He had lost Sophia, lost his job, and his business dreams felt impossible now. One evening, Daniel sat beside him, arms crossed. "So what now?" You're gonna sit here and let life crush you? Abel sighed. I don't know, Daniel. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe I was chasing something I was never meant to have. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say. You're not a loser, Abel. You've always had something special. You just forgot it. So get up, fight back, prove them all wrong. Something in Abel shifted. With renewed determination, the next week, he started job hunting again. It was humiliating. Rejections at every turn, people looking at him like he wasn't worth their time. But he refused to quit. Eventually, he landed a job as a waiter in a small restaurant. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start after being sacked from the first restaurant he worked in. He pulled his heart and mind into his job, walking 2 jobs every single day to get back on his feet and to strive through and to småworst. That was how he met a girl named Helen. She was the cashier in the restaurant. She was a bright, kind girl with an easy laugh that made the hard days bearable. Unlike Sophia, she never made him feel small. She listened, she encouraged. One evening, after closing, Abel sat on the bench just outside the restaurant. In the evening, as he looked at the vibrant city, Helen sat beside him on a bench. You talk about business a lot whenever you sit alone on this bench, she said, smiling. What are you really passionate about? Abel hesitated before answering. Fashion. I design clothes. Helen's eyes lit up. I need to see them. Days later, Helen came by at his apartment and found his sketches and was blown away. Abel? These are incredible. I know someone who needs to see this. I don't know if I am good enough. Still figuring things out. Abel said with an uncertain expression. What is a risk for, if we don't take one? I believe in you, Abel. You just have to believe in yourself too. And that was how she introduced him to Mr. Bertrand, one of the finest designers in town, who happened to know Helen and owed her a favor. Abel threw himself into work with a newfound hunger. For 13 months, he juggled 2 jobs, working at the restaurant during the day and designing clothes late into the night. Sleep became a luxury, but failure was no longer an option. With Mr. Bertrand's investment and mentorship, Abel had access to high-quality fabrics, fashion workshops, and industry contacts. But nothing was handed to him. He worked relentlessly. Helen was there every step of the way, cheering him on. You're unstoppable, Abel, she would say, her eyes filled with admiration. At first, his designs sold in small quantities, but as word spread, more orders poured in. Celebrities and influencers started wearing his designer clothes. Soon, his name became a whisper in the fashion world, a whisper that grew into a roar. With time, he began to sell big, and contracts came for him all around, from celebrities to models and to people in higher places. In no time, Abel became a millionaire, and he owed all that to Helen, who was an open door to him. One evening, Mr. Bertrand walked into Abel's workshop with a satisfied grin. It's time, Abel. The world needs to see your work in action. In partnership with Mr. Bertrand, Abel decided to host his own first official fashion event for his own unique designs that he has been working on. Helen squeezed his hand. You deserve this. The months that followed were a blur of preparation. Models were selected, invitations sent out, and the media buzzed with anticipation. Abel's company name was everywhere. Finally, the night arrived. The venue was breathtaking. Golden chandeliers, a runway lined with the finest fabrics, and an elite audience filled with celebrities, designers, and investors. As the lights dimmed and the first model stepped onto the runway, Abel felt tears in his eyes. He had made it. At the after-party, Helen stood beside him, her smile brighter than the city lights. Abel turned to her, his heart pounding. Helen, none of this would have been possible without you. I love you. Helen gasped. This was the first time Abel had said that to her. She laughed softly. I love you too, Abel. That night, they became a couple. And Abel, the once heartbroken waiter, was now a self-made millionaire. The grand fashion auction was one of the biggest events of the year. Designers, celebrities, and wealthy investors filled the luxurious hall, eager to bid on exclusive pieces. Among the excited attendees were Lily and Precious, their eyes sparkling at the thought of mingling with high-profile figures. This is where real men are, Sophia, Precious whispered, nudging her. Not broke dreamers. Sophia decided to come to the party since her friends are fashion types of people. Sophia chuckled, adjusting her elegant dress, but deep down, she felt like she's missing out on something. It had been over 1 year since she broke up with Abel, and she hadn't heard from him ever since then. Had he finally faded into obscurity? As they made their way through the crowd, Sophia accidentally bumped into a well-dressed man. "Watch where you're going," she snapped before looking up, her breath caught in her throat. It was Abel. He looked different, confident, refined, and powerful. His tailored black suit fit perfectly, and the watch on his wrist screamed wealth, but she didn't recognize him. Lily scoffed. "Some people never change. He still looks like a waiter trying too hard." Precious laughed. "Exactly. Wearing expensive clothes doesn't make you rich." Abel smirked but remained silent. Years ago, their words would have crushed him. Now, they meant nothing. "Hey, Sophia, it's been a long time. How are you doing?" he asked with a smile on his face. Sophia was a little disoriented as she gazes at Abel for a moment and responded, "I am great, Abel. It's been a while too." After exchanging greetings, Abel left her. The event soon began, and a hush fell over the crowd as the host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to introduce tonight's headlining designer, Abel Owen, CEO of AO Fashion Empire." A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Sophia, Lily, and Precious turned pale. Abel walked onto the stage with grace and authority. Cameras flashed, and applause filled the room. Sophia's heart pounded. She had thrown him away. And now he stood before her, a man she could never have again. Sophia was ashamed of all the insults she rained on Abel about his business. It turns out, it was what made him a millionaire he is today. The event had ended, but Sophia's mind was in turmoil. She had spent the evening in shock, watching Abel bask in success, the same Abel she had humiliated, discarded, and left for dead. Unable to ignore the weight pressing on her chest, she gathered her courage and walked toward him. He stood near the exit, speaking with some investors, his presence commanding. Helen stood by his side, her hand gently resting on his arm. "Abel," Sophia called softly. He turned, his sharp gaze meeting hers. For a brief second, she saw a flicker of recognition, memories of their past, but it disappeared just as quickly. "Sophia," he acknowledged, his voice unreadable. She swallowed hard. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Abel raised an eyebrow, but he didn't interrupt. Sophia's voice trembled. "I was foolish. I let others, my friends, poison my mind, and I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I regret it. Deeply." Abel remained silent, studying her. Then he exhaled lightly and spoke. "I appreciate your words, Sophia, but you see, some wounds heal, yet the scars remain, but I have forgiven you." She blinked rapidly, feeling the sting of rejection. "Maybe we could start over? We had something special, Abel." Before Abel could respond, Helen gently squeezed his hand and smiled. "Sophia," Abel said, stepping aside, "meet Helen, my girlfriend." Sophia's heart sank. Helen extended her hand politely. "It's nice to meet you. Abel has told me much about you," she said warmly, but Sophia saw the unspoken message in her eyes. He had moved on. Tears burned at the back of her eyes. She forced a smile, nodded, and turned away. As she walked out of the venue, her chest felt hollow. She had lost him forever. Meanwhile, Abel and Helen clinked glasses of champagne, celebrating not just his success, but their love. After the event, Abel established a strong hold on his company with investors that were willing to invest with him. Abel for the first time felt fulfilled as he stood outside his luxury penthouse, overlooking the dazzling city lights. The air was crisp, and beside him, Helen leaned against the railing, smiling at him. "You did it, Abel," she whispered. "You turned pain into power." He exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. There was no more bitterness, no more regret, only gratitude. He had risen from rock bottom, not just in wealth, but in self-worth. Meanwhile, Sophia sat alone in her small apartment, scrolling through social media. Every headline spoke of Abel's success, each picture showcasing his brilliance, his charm, and his unwavering determination. She stared at his happy photos with Helen, a deep sadness settling in her chest. She had chosen temporary comfort over true love. And now, she had to live with that choice. But Abel wasn't thinking about Sophia anymore. He had learned that the past only holds power if you let it. Turning to Helen, he smiled. "Let's keep building, love. The best is yet to come." Hand in hand, they walked back inside, ready to embrace their future together. Abel had finally won, not just in success, but in love and life. Dear viewers, what do you think about this story? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and share it with friends. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks, and see you in the next video. Bye.